Hello and welcome to Jerry's Live. My name is Michaela Westra and I'm going to be your host tonight. Now today, before we get started, our class code is going to be hashtag JL372. Now you can use that code to find everything that I'm using tonight. You can just pop that in the search bar on JerrysArtarama.com and it will pull up everything that we have. Also, if you have any questions throughout, please leave a comment on whatever platform you are watching on. I have two lovely moderators tonight, Amanda and Emmy, that can answer or ask me any questions that you have. Now, today we are going to be talking about alcohol ink and alcohol markers. And in particular, we're going to go over swatching and surfaces. Now, I have fallen in love with this medium. I haven't really played with it much before, but I'm definitely falling in love with it now because it's just very versatile and you can use it in so many different ways, especially the inks, and you can get some really beautiful results. So let's go ahead and jump in. Now to start, there is something new that we just brought in, and it is going to be these ink racks. Now I mentioned this in the previous Jerry's Live where I was talking about alcohol ink techniques, that these were going to be coming soon, and they are here. Now the amazing thing is there are 10 sets of these little ink racks, and if you get all 10 sets, you get all 100 colors of the Artfinity inks. Now, a really fun thing with these sets is each set has a really different mood and a different vibe. So I wanted to show you what all of those color combinations looked like. So let's go ahead and jump to our overhead camera. Now, this is going to be our full list of all the 10 sets. Each set has 10 colors, and each one has a different vibe. So starting up at the top, I have like a really kind of a cool rainbow, and then I have more of a warm rainbow, and then I have mixology, which is going to have both your primary colors and your mixing colors, as well as a blender medium and a variety of neutral grays. So this is really great if you are big on mixing your own colors. Now I have Pretty in Pastel, which is a really nice collection of soft colors. We have Day Glow, which are very vibrant, punchy colors. Then we have the Devastatingly Beautiful and 90s Grunge, which are both of my favorites, because they have just these beautiful, like, earthy colors in there, and they're both unique in their own way. So the Devastatingly Beautiful has a nice range of all the colors, where the 90s Grunge is a little bit more grungy, I guess you could say, where it's a little bit more, has those earthy tones in there. And then lastly, we have Close Encounter and Retrograde, which is like blues, greens, and purple, and then the retrograde is those reds and yellows and oranges. So if you get all 10, you have all of these colors, but even if you just get a couple of your favorites, they have a really nice selection in each set. Now let's go ahead and look at the rack itself. So they come in a little set where you have the rack in here, but it also comes with this guy here, which is super helpful when you are filling out your rack. So if I pull out this one again, this is that 90s Grunge. You can see that each of these bottles is labeled with a little swatch card. Now you get to make these yourself in case you want to have a painted gradient, or if you just want a really thick layer. These are a combination of thick and thin, so I'll show you exactly how to make these, but you can make them yourself so that you can physically see what you have in your rack here. But what you would do is you will take whatever surface that you're going to be working with. Let's say that's the Artfinity Synthesis Pad. You will open that up, do a little dot of whatever color you're doing. You don't need a lot for these swatches. But then you can leave it like that, or you can spritz a little bit of alcohol and get kind of a fun effect going on and see where the color changes when it's thinner, where it changes when it's thicker. See that variation in there. You will let this dry, and you can take this template, lay it on there, and cut out the perfect size to put in those slots on the ink rack. And I just think it's really fun to make my own swatches. So I wanted to show you that, since that is brand new. And I really enjoy it because these bottles don't roll off your table, which is fantastic, but they don't always stand up as easily as they do like on their side. So having something to let it sit and it doesn't move around, and I have something physical to see what color that is, I think these are really fun. Now, on the topic of swatching, let's switch over to the markers. Now, I have two sets here. This is going to be the same alcohol ink as these Artfinity inks that I just showed, but these are them in marker form. So I have both the 150 set, set A and set B. This is all 300 colors in the markers, and they both come with their own little swatch cards. So I just wanted to show you what those colors look like, because I just really enjoy looking at colors and swatches. So both sets look very similar, but they're going to have their own range of different colors. You can see in the set A, this set has these fluorescent colors down here. And in set B, you have a little bit more of a grayish variety of colors in here. But other than that, they're very similar. And there's just a small variation of how much there is of different colors. But total, 300 different colors in these two sets. Now, I wanted to show you a couple things with the markers. If you haven't seen these before, all of these are going to be in the same order as your little swatch card. So if you pull out your markers that you're working with and you need to put them back in the right place, this is super easy with finding where they go. They also have a lid that you can fold into a little triangle and have it easily available to you as you work. Now, if you are working with both the markers and the inks, there are 100 colors in the marker sets that can be refilled with the inks. So if you run out of one of your favorite colors and we have an ink for it, you're able to refill that one marker. All right. Now, if you saw in set B, for those markers, I had some markers missing. That is because I pulled some out for testing out our surfaces. Now, for our surfaces, I wanted to pick out some things that are good for just the markers, some things that are good for just the inks, and some things that are good for both, in case you want to work with both. And for all of those, I was mostly looking at drawing the same thing so that we can see what that one thing and that one process looks like on different surfaces. And I chose some cherries. So that's what these markers are for, the markers that I use to draw those cherries. I can continue with the same process and the same colors. All right, now before we jump in, I did want to ask you what your favorite marker set was. So let me pull that out again. There are 10 different sets. We have those super vibrant colors, those kind of muted colors. We have some where it's mostly the same colors, whether it's greens and blues and those reds. go ahead and share what your favorites were. And I'm going to start pulling out our surfaces so we can see what those surfaces look like. You have a question?
Can you tell us if they are light fast and or dye based?
Yes, so these are dye-based colors and therefore are considered not light fast. However, I do have something to help you guys to make it more UV resistant, if is that the right wording? Okay, so we'll go over that a little bit later. It will make these a little bit more archival and last a lot longer and keep those solid bright colors. Do we need this chart still for selecting out our favorite sets? Maybe? So I mostly just wanted to pick out 2 colors from one of these sets to show what happens with the ink on these surfaces. But I want to let you guys kind of peruse what we have and pick from your favorites. So while you guys are looking at that, I have 3 paper surfaces, and then I have 3 panel surfaces plus something kind of fun. So these are the 3 surfaces. I have the Artfinity Synthesis, I have Soho Bristol paper, and I have Soho marker paper. I'll let you guys keep looking at this if you need it. And then I had 3 panels, which I'll go over a little bit later.
Can you quickly go back over the names of the sets one more time?
Absolutely.
Please, thank you.
So up top, we have Enigma. This is going to be the cooler rainbow. I have Sweet Tooth, which is the second one. That's going to be a warmer rainbow. So that's those top 2. And in the top right of each of those columns, you see the item number. If you type that number in the search bar at JerrysArtarama.com, it will pull that set up immediately for you. The third one is going to be Mixology. That has the primaries and mixing colors, as well as a selection of grays and a blender medium. Then we have Throwing Shade, which is a really nice selection of like deep colors. Then we have Pretty in Pastel, which are those pastel colors. Day Glow, which are those super vibrant punchy colors. Then we have Devastatingly Beautiful, which is like those deep jewel tones. Then we have 90s Grunge, those earthy kind of rainbow colors. Close Encounter and Retrograde are those mostly cool and mostly warm colors at the bottom there. All right, and those are all of our sets. I love this so much. I actually helped select each of these sets, so I feel a very close connection to all of them, but I'm really excited to see which ones are your favorites. All right, do we have any yet, or do we need a little bit more time?
So far on Facebook, we've gotten votes for Day Glow and Grunge.
Ooh, yes.
YouTube, we have Devastatingly Beautiful and Retrograde.
All right, so no doubles up yet, but those are all amazing selections. If I had to choose, I'd probably go for 90s Grunge, but I've been going to that one quite a bit.
We've got 3 that want the bright ones.
The Day Glow?
2 that want grunge on Facebook, yeah.
And then we also got messaged a Grunge.
Yeah. That's 3 and 3
All
on
right,
Facebook.
so let's go ahead and change our, actually, let's just go for Day Glow, since I'm so used to using Grunge. I love it. That Day Glow is super vibrant. So let's go ahead and use that one. And I'm not going to use the whole set, like I said. I just wanted to use, I believe that's this one right here.
Day Glow's pulling up on YouTube.
Yep. Here's that Day Glow. It's almost fluorescent. Actually, it might be fluorescent, some of these colors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. They do actually fluoresce.
They do fluoresce? Mm-hmm. Awesome. So this is the Day Glow set. I just wanted to select 2 colors from this set So maybe I'll go with, I love this mint blue. And maybe I'll go for the fluorescent violet.
Sorry, I should change that
Yes.
statement. I said anything that says fluorescent
Okay.
on it fluoresces. The
Yes.
mint blue does not actually fluoresce because it's not called fluorescent.
Okay, so yeah, the Day Glow does have all of the fluorescent colors in here. So only those fluorescent, in case you couldn't hear, are the ones that do fluoresce. Go ahead and put that back. And I'm just going to grab the same two colors from the marker sets. And I use these to find them. Fluorescent violet is in set A. And mint blue, boop-a-doo, I believe is in this other one. Nope. Nope, it's both are in set A. Mint blue and fluorescent violet. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to be using these two colors to show what these two different mediums look like on these paper surfaces, and then we'll switch over to the panels. Now let's start from thinnest to thickest, and so the thinnest of these three is going to be the marker paper. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull the sheet out of here. And since I already know how it's going to react to the ink, I'm just going to double up here. So let's go ahead and start with the ink. I wanted to show what the ink is going to look like on these papers, even though this one is particularly made for just markers. So I'm just going to put a couple of dots on here. I'm going to take one of my disposable brushes and just pull them together, see how they mix. Now I will say, as I'm doing this, this is not a surface I would recommend for ink, but I did want to show you what it looked like. So there's a lot of spreading with this surface, and it is bleeding through. So I wouldn't recommend this surface for ink, but I did want to show you what that looked like in case you were curious. Now I would recommend this surface for the markers, and I wanted to show you what different things look like on this surface. So just pulling it down, as well as how it layers. And then I also wanted to show how it mixes and blends together. So I was going to do a little sphere. So you can see with that little triangle that I did above my sphere that it blends together really well in one go, and then the more layers you add, you get a slightly different shade. And then if I lay something down and I go back to another color, can I move this around? I can a little bit. Not as well as I could on a different surface, but there is a little bit of movement and picking up of the previous color. And then I'll just go ahead and clean my markers. Alright, so that is the Soho marker paper. I'm going to do the same thing with all of the other ones, and then we can compare and contrast between all three. So the next in thickness is going to be the Artfinity Synthesis paper. Now, the Soho marker paper is fairly thin. It's a little bit thicker than maybe copy paper, but it's really good for just markers. Now the Artfinity Synthesis paper, I'm going to grab a sheet from here as well. This one is going to be a little bit thicker. You can kind of hear that, how much thicker it is than the marker paper. Put this off to the side. Start with those two inks. This is one I would recommend for the inks that can work with both the ink and the markers. Let's go ahead and blend them together. However, I would say that I wouldn't put it directly on the surface. This is something I would enjoy painting with on here. Let me mix that a little bit better. Okay. And then we have those markers. I love how that sounds on the paper. How does it layer? Like if you want a solid tone of color, or if you want to add more layers. Now you can see with this, especially once I start making the sphere, this is a surface that you can move around the marker ink. Once it's on there, it can also be completely removed off the surface. The way it is created, it's more of a, it's not an absorbent surface. So with these papers, you're looking at things that are absorbent and things that are not absorbent. This is going to be the least absorbent paper. And that means I can really move this ink around. But that also means I can start picking up like this dark line here. If I go in with this enough, I could almost completely remove that with another marker. So you can kind of see I removed that purple edge with that blue. So that is something you want to be careful with this surface. This is amazing for both the ink and the marker. But if you are layering, make sure you're careful and aware that the more you work at it, the more you're likely to pick up other layers that are underneath. All right, and that is the Artfinity Synthesis paper. And I did have a sketch of the cherries, but I did do this ahead of time just for timing, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And then lastly, we have the Soho Bristol paper. And this is going to be the thickest paper. It's going to be a little bit closer to like a cardstock. And I think this is probably my favorite surface when it comes to the markers. But let's go ahead and see what these inks look like first. Now this is something you could put the inks on. It doesn't move around a lot. It just stays where it's at. This is another one where I would probably recommend painting on this surface instead of dropping ink on here, because you're really not going to get a lot of movement. You're just going to get your little circle of your dot, however you put that on there. But let that dry a little bit. It does bleed through a little bit. And I should have used this guy. That's okay. Now let's go ahead and look at those markers on here. And how do they lay down? I think it's a lot softer on this surface. And I still have some purple on this guy. I think especially with large areas like this, it's a lot smoother and a lot softer. And you can build up that color the more you layer it because it's not going to pick up. This is going to be the most absorbent surface of all three. And my sphere. Now this is another one, it's not going to be able to pick up that ink. Whatever you lay down, that is how it's going to stay. So it's going to be, you're going to work with this a little bit differently than you would some of the other surfaces. But I think the outcome is a lot more beautiful, in my opinion. Now everyone's going to have their own opinion when it comes to which surface is their favorite. Alright, I just did a super quick sphere. But let's go ahead and see all three of these next to each other. And then I'll pull out those cherries. Now, there's also a difference in the sheen. Let me show you that real quick. The Artfinity is in the middle. That's going to leave a kind of glossy sheen. The Bristol is going to be very matte. And the marker is going to be kind of satin with those inks. We have a question?
Yeah, Gigi was wondering if you can use them on watercolor paper or to highlight with watercolors.
You could. I haven't tried it, so I don't know what it's going to look like, but my guess is it's going to be very similar to how the Bristol looks. Keep in mind, some watercolor is going to have texture and this Bristol does not. So definitely test it out, see how it looks. But yeah, you could definitely use that on there. All right. And then here are my cherries. So this is going to be the marker paper cherries. This is my Artfinity and the Bristol. So again, you can see the sheen on these two because they're not quite as absorbent as the Bristol, where it's going to be very matte. Now, because these two are not absorbent, they're also going to be the most vibrant. So you can kind of see that already with these two, how much more vibrant they are than this one. Now, the Bristol, like I said, is going to be the softest. So let me pull the marker and the Bristol up close here. You can see that because it is not absorbent, you can see where those colors are touching and mixing and overlapping, where on the Bristol, they feel a lot smoother together. So each one has their pros and cons, but I wanted to show you what each one looked like and figure out which is going to work best for you. And I hope that this was helpful. We have a few more surfaces that we're going to go over and do the same couple of tests. And I'm actually going to pull out the normal panels first and save the fun stuff for last. Have a question?
Yes. How do these papers compare to Yupo?
Yupo's going to be similar. It's kind of a combination, I think, between like the marker paper and the Artfinity synthesis paper. And I'm just trying to be proactive with my cleaning here. I meant to put something underneath. I knew it was going to bleed. But anyway. So these are the next surfaces that I have. I have the Yes Canvas panel on the left here. And then I have a DaVinci Pro panel. Now this one is fun because this is double-sided. I have the smooth side here and I have the medium texture size here with some fun extra things that I wanted to show you. So let's go ahead and start with these. We're going to do the same test. Grab those inks. And we'll do them at the same time, might as well. You can already see that because this is so smooth, that ink is moving around a lot more, where this canvas texture is kind of letting it stay put. But you can move it around and mix it together. And you can see what those brush strokes look like on there. And when it comes to that absorbency and how they work that we talked about, the Da Vinci Pro panel is going to work similarly to the Artfinity Synthesis paper that we were looking at. This one is not going to be like any of the surfaces that we really looked at. This is going to be a little bit more absorbent than this guy, but it's going to not, I don't know, it's really hard to explain the Yes Canvas. It works with almost everything. Actually, it does work with everything. And it's just so hard to explain how this ink works on this surface. I'm just going to let you guys look and see for yourselves. It moves around a lot. And it can move around a lot, but once you drop it on there, it doesn't move. So it's very confusing. It's very different from all the other surfaces. And it dries to a really nice glossy sheen. I would show you in the light, but I don't want the ink to roll off the surface, so hopefully you believe me. All right, let's look at those markers. Now you'll be able to see the canvas texture with that Yes Canvas panel. And on the Da Vinci Pro panel, it really just glides on there. How does it layer? It's actually very smooth layering for that solid area. Like, you don't see a lot of lines in between. I actually have one of Emmy's pieces. She used the Da Vinci Pro panel to paint with the Artfinity inks. This was for, I believe, what was the green one called?
Close Encounter?
Close Encounter, which is why we have a lovely alien cat here. This was the smooth side, so you can really see how fun it is to move this around. You can see just a little bit of alcohol on here, pulled it up almost straight to white without brushing anything out of the way. So this you can probably remove straight to white with just alcohol and a cotton bud or a rag if you really wanted to work that way. And then let's do a quick sphere, see how those colors mix on these surfaces. Now I believe both of these can be reactivated, more so with the smooth Da Vinci Pro panel, but you can see I can already mix these two colors together on the Pro panel. Get a nice gradient with that one. See if we can do the same on the Yes Canvas, and we can. Now, I didn't work on the Yes Canvas as much as I thought I would, but I'm really impressed with how these inks and the markers work on that surface. So there are those two. Very similar, but they have their own perks. They have very different texture, but work very similarly. Now, the other side is this medium texture. Should have dried that before I put that down. We're learning lessons today. So let's go ahead and see if that slight texture difference has a different reaction to these mediums. I don't think so.
Did you happen to have cherries on these two surfaces as well? Because I think Amanda needs more cherries over here.
I did not make cherries ahead of time for this one. I did want to show cherries live with these two, but I wanted to show you these two fun things first.
She's so mad at how good they are.
Thank you.
Literally, the one on the Bristol looks like a photo, and I'm upset.
Okay, so it does move around very similarly to the other side. Now, I do want to show you these. While we were experimenting with these inks and different techniques, two of the things that we came across are using things like crackle paste and glass bead gel. So we wanted to see what would happen with these inks on different textures, of course. And these two were some of our favorites. So here is actually maybe I'll do one color on each. Okay, here is the crackle paste. I'll show you guys that up close. It's just so beautiful. It goes into all those little crevices, and then you can put a layer of like clear acrylic on top to seal it, and then you can continue painting on top of that. I just love the way that crackle paste reacts with the ink. And I'll show you, I did create art with the 90s grunge, my favorite, and using the crackle paste on the, I believe this was the Resist Grip Da Vinci panel, or maybe it was the medium texture. So this lighter area is just the surface of that Da Vinci panel, and these darker areas are where I put on the crackle paste. You can see those tiny little crackles in there. I just think that this is such a fun combination of things. And then the glass bead gel. Very similar where it finds those little crevices and it just moves around and creates such a fun texture. Let me add just a little bit of alcohol to this so you can see those beads. It's a very dark color, but those beads allow the white of the panel to shine through and create a really nice bumpy texture. So those are just two of the possibilities. But experimenting with texture, not just the surface, is gonna give you a lot more fun ideas. Let's do a quick triangle, see how they layer. It does pick up very similar to the other side. Then we'll do a quick little sphere. Very fast sphere. It's not very pretty, but we get the idea. It can pick up, it can move the ink around, so you will get some really nice gradations with this side as well. All right. Now, this is still drying and I have ink everywhere. So I'm just going to sop this up a little bit. Go back to our other side. And let's do a couple of cherries. So I have my cherry markers here. Let me put a cap on these guys. And let's see if I remember the order of things. I believe I started with the lightest color in my cherry, which is kind of like, here, let me pull out my picture. This light pinkish color. So I went for grayish cherry, of course. And I just covered the whole thing in this grayish cherry color. Even my highlight. Oh, it's really dark. Now this color is really light. I'm gonna try and see if you guys can see it. But I wanted my highlights to be really light, but also not white. And I'm trying not to wipe away my drawing here, so I'm not filling it in completely. And you can see on the Yes canvas, it's a little bit more prominent, that light color. So maybe this Yes canvas creates maybe not darker colors, but maybe more vibrant color. We'll see. And now would be a great time if you have any questions for me while I work on these cherries. The next color I'm going to go for is Frozen Strawberry. And I'm just working from my lights to my darks. So now that I have all of that covered in a really light color, I'm now going to cover everything except for my highlights. And since this is not an absorbent surface, I'm being kind of aware of my mark making. So for large areas, I try to not pick up the tip of my marker until I'm done with that area, because these dry within a couple of seconds, and once it dries, it can kind of create a little bit of a line between layers where that ink kind of reactivates and then dries again. And then, do we have anyone watching that is a huge alcohol ink fan? Like, do they use it all the time? And again, I'm so surprised by this Yes canvas. I just love how it's like workable, but also stays put. It's like a weird combination of the marker paper and the Bristol paper. I really don't know how to explain it. And then again, I'm just going up in my darkness, or in my value. And next I have Strawberry Popsicle. I kind of want to stick with the fruit theme I'm seeing. And again, I'm going through everything except for the next lightest value. And what's great about these non-absorbent surfaces is I can go back and blend these together with a brush if I wanted to, with just the smallest amount of alcohol in there. This alcohol, if you add it to either the markers or the ink, a little bit does go a long way. I have a little bit of a highlight over here that I'm going to try and keep. Again, if I wanted to, I could go back with like a cotton swab and pull things back out. This color looks super vibrant on the cameras. All right, now there's a little bit up here next to the stem. Now, I might actually show blending. I do have another disposable brush here. This is, I believe, the Creative Mark version. I'm just soaking it with a little bit of alcohol, dabbing off any excess on my rag. I'm gonna see how well these blend. Oh, still starchy, hold on. All right. Let's see how they blend. Nice. And I had a little bit of a highlight over on this side that I kind of lost. Let me try and pull that back. I can soften up those edges. Because like I said, as they dry and layers kind of blend together, you get a little bit of a line where those two meet. I'm looking for my alcohol like it's not in my hand. We have another question?
Yes, on Instagram, we were wondering, do we think this works with collage on canvas? And can you seal the markers with a finish?
Yes. I have that at the end. This is what I was going to show you guys earlier. This is the Krylon UV Archival Varnish in matte. They come in, I believe, gloss and satin as well. This is amazing because once you are done, whatever surface you decide on, if you put a few layers of this, it will help it with its light fastness and the overall surface. I always forget the word. Finish. So if you're working on something that maybe you're combining the marker and the alcohol ink and they have a different sheen to it, using this spray is going to help unify it. And I do have an example, which isn't quite as impressive as I thought it would be, which might make them look better. But this is just something random I did with the inks on the Artfinity Synthesis pad, and I just pulled it straight down to white, which I can show you. I did half. You can kind of see that line across half of it. I had that matte finish, and I put this in a window for a week, and the color didn't really change. So I thought there would be a more impressive shift with how it faded in the light, but I must not have left it in the window for long enough. But this is going to help it last in the sun. And it's going to unify. You can see where it's thinner, it's not quite as shiny as where it's thicker. It unifies the whole thing with that spray. So yeah. Was there another question that I might have... did you ask two questions?
Would this work with collage on canvas?
Collage on canvas. It might work on the canvas. I don't know how it's going to work with whatever collage implements you have. Like if you have like random like sheets of paper, like copy paper, I can actually show you what that looks like. I have just a sheet of copy paper here. See what these two different mediums look like on there. It's not terrible, not as terrible as I thought it would be, but it does spread a lot with the ink. You can definitely see where the marker kind of overlapped. You don't really get a lot of blending, and you get kind of a spotty effect with just a single stroke. So I don't know what kind of other materials you have with the collage, but canvas, I don't think there would be much of an issue. It might work similarly to the Yes canvas, but it really depends on what canvas you have. I hope that's helpful. I don't know if I have a sure answer for you on that question.
I feel like the glues would also come into effect. Like
Yeah.
any adhesive
Yeah.
might repel. Like
That's a
adhesives
good
are
point.
weird like that. We have a question over on YouTube.
Sure.
How would the inks and markers behave on vellum?
Vellum. I haven't tried that, but I feel like it's not a super... maybe similar to Bristol. I haven't tested it, so I don't know how it would react, but my guess would be similar to Bristol. I don't think it's a super, I don't think it's a super absorbent surface, so I don't know. We'll see. I think someone's grabbing some vellum, so that's a really great question. And I'm just continuing with my cherries. All right, so we have some vellum here.
I can't sign that one.
Let's see what these look like. I'm actually really curious about this. So I got a couple sheets. Let's see. So markers. I don't think you'll have any issue when it comes to markers, but let's see. Yeah, so it looks like it's not a super absorbent surface, but there's still some absorbency. Layering. Seems similar to the marker paper for this one. It does look like it reactivates a little bit. Let's do a little bit of a sphere. Oh, I like my brush tip. I know there's a chisel tip as well, but I'm partial to the brush. It does look like I can reactivate and blend. Ooh. And let's do the big test of ink. Let's see how these work on here. So there is some spreading, still going. Let's see how they move around. Not bad. I'd say you could use this. Be careful with straight alcohol ink. It does look like it's continuing to spread. But it does blend and it does reactivate, so you could if you wanted to. Again, I would recommend painting with the alcohol ink if that's what you're going to be using. But yeah, not a bad surface. And it didn't bleed through.
It has like a transparency to it.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, nice.
So you could layer it. Speaking of transparency, I'm going to go over those last two surfaces. I didn't get to finish those cherries. I'm so sorry. We might be able to jump back to them. And I made more of a mess, but it's all good. So the two fun surfaces I have, I've shown maybe both of them before, but we'll see. Let me grab another sheet of Bristol because one of them is transparent. All right, so I'm just going to show you the cherries. I have this guy and this guy. So what I have here is Illumicomp, and I have, I believe this is Creative Mark acrylic tiles. Now these are super fun because they are not absorbent. They're going to work very similarly to the DaVinci Pro panel, the smooth side. But these you can completely wipe off. So you do want to be careful with that. It can be very helpful for you in your process though. So if you want to erase and build back up, you can do that. When it comes to markers, you can probably tell in this guy here, you don't get quite as vibrant, and you can't get super thick because you can't really layer as much. The more you layer, the more you can reactivate what's underneath and they'll just blend together. So that is a downside. It is such a beautiful surface though. On the other side, this is the Devastatingly Beautiful set where I created a little landscape. So those dark colors look amazing on this surface when that light shines through. The lighter colors are really hard to see. So this gray down here, a little bit difficult to see. I mean, that's what I wanted, but this is a couple of layers. This edge here is a couple of layers of that green, and it's still pretty light. So those are some of the things that I've noticed with these guys. And then I have the acrylic tile, which I think is just so fun because you can layer. Do I have another one? I thought I did. So you could layer this. This could be your top layer, and then you could go and add another one underneath and just add a splash of like pink ink, and that would create a nice layering effect. But these are two super fun surfaces that I thought I should include that are amazing for both the ink and the markers. All right, do we want to see any other tests with these two surfaces? I do have another Illumicon panel if we wanted to see that. I thought I had another clear tile, but maybe, oh yes I do. So I have another one of both of these if we want to see more tests than just the cherries. So let me know, and I can work on those other cherries before we finish. So we're basically almost done for the day. But I wanted to leave time for any last minute questions. We have one?
Yes, you were using disposable brushes to paint with. Would you recommend sticking with disposable, or could you maybe wash them out and reuse them?
I don't know how great alcohol ink is going to be to your really fancy brushes, which is why I like to stick to the ones that are not as fancy. Now these are still great and I still use them. Even if you get to this point and it dries and it hardens, you can still clean this off with alcohol and keep going with it. So even though they're disposable, you can keep using these, and I would only use them for my alcohol inks. Another question?
Yeah, will these materials stick to glass?
So it's going to work similarly with glass than it does with the acrylic tile. It's going to be harder to stick to this surface. It's easy to wipe off. It might not layer super well, but you definitely can. And as I go, I'm just continuing with, I believe this is Strawberry Popsicle. And then maybe I'll jump into, should I jump into the green or should I just continue with the cherries? Amanda, what do you think?
Don't put this on me. Maybe you show some of the green. You've shown a lot of the red.
Okay. If you are curious about the colors I use next for the red, I'll show you those. So the next three colors in my value scale, I went up next with Poppy Red, then Henna, and then for those super dark darks, I went for a Warm Gray. This was Warm Gray 10. And all of these colors that I selected for the cherries are from the marker set B, in case you are curious. For the greens, I believe I started with, and I don't know how to say this word, anise? Is that it? Okay. It's like a really nice light green, so I can go through and add this to everything that is green, and then I can just continue layering as I go. I think there's another thing up here that I lost. But I'm able to, I love filling in these leaves. And you know how I said that when you put something that dries next to something that's wet, it kind of creates a line between those barriers. I use that to my benefit when it comes to these leaves, as I can go in without picking up my marker, fill in one area, let it dry for a second, go in, fill my next area, and it's going to automatically create a little bit of a line between those two shapes. And I get kind of a natural vein in my leaf. So even if you find something to be more of a, not something you would prefer in a surface, you could use it to your advantage. So knowing those things is really helpful, I think. And once I get this in here a little bit more, I can maybe show you that separation. So right around here and here, whoop, whoop, there's a little bit of a line where those two separate and where they kind of come together. It's really subtle, But as someone who works up close with my drawings and things, that's something that I notice. And it's really prominent on like these guys, actually. I can show you that. Where it comes together, you can see a little bit of a line. And you can bring it to your own use. Alright, it looks like we are out of time. I thought I would get more done with these. Let's do a quick addition to our yes canvas. And then we'll finish up. Now, I hope you found this helpful and that you enjoyed. And I hope you pick out your favorite surface and try it out for yourself. Let's look at all those cherries again. All right. Deep-a-doo. Deep-a-doo. All right. So thank you guys for coming. That was today's show, all about Artfinity alcohol inks and alcohol markers. Don't forget today's class code, which is JL372, in case you're curious about any of these things. And we will see you next week. I'll actually be here again. We have a very special guest coming in. We have Andrew Cook coming, and we're going to talk about some more surfaces, but this time we're going to talk about watercolor surfaces. So come join us next time if you're curious about that as well. All right, thank you guys for coming, and we'll see you later. Bye.